Hello everyone. My video today is about how to knit a cast iron pot handle cover in less than 15 minutes. This is my pattern, 35 rows of circular knitting, 1 tube. These are the tools and materials I used. I used a 22 needle knitting machine. You can use any brand of 22 needle knitting machines. Before starting, set the switch down to the circular knitting position. Casting on with waste yarn for about 5 to 10 rows, slowly turn the handle clockwise. Alternately place the cotton yarn before and after the rising needle until it reaches the starting point again. I use white cotton yarn because it forms a clear thread with the main yarn at the start of the needle, and the needles can be easily picked up one by one later as well. It is convenient for seamless binding. Starting with waste yarn can make the binding smoother, reduce the thickness of the joint, and improve the beauty of the finished product. The knitting part of the main yarn will not be affected when it is disassembled later. After starting with 5 to 10 rows of waste yarn, set the row counter to 0, switch to the main yarn, and start knitting the finished product with the main yarn. 35 rows of circular knitting. I use my left hand as adding weight to the machine for tension control to prevent loose or uneven knitting, especially when knitting with finer or 100% cotton yarns. I use 100% cotton yarn for this project. Advantage of tension control is, in some cases, especially for lightweight yarns or 100% cotton yarns, it can reduce the chance of missed stitches or dropped stitches. Different circular knitting machines will have different ways to connect and adjust the weight. I personally highly recommend using your own hand as it is more flexible and can adjust the tension accordingly. Cast off with waste yarn. Be careful not to tie it with the main yarn. It will be more convenient to remove the waste yarns after project completed. Cut the cotton thread to about 30 centimeters long. Slowly turn the handle clockwise until all the thread loops are off the hook on the machine. Pull and smooth the tub flat. Use the interface point of the waste yarn and the main yarn as the base point, and start from the other side. Bind off each end with a crochet, with directly weaving the stitches together without additional yarn. Transfer the first stitch. Insert the crochet hook into the first stitch on the knitting needle and pull it off the needle, keeping it on the crochet hook. Transfer the next stitch. Insert the hook into the next stitch on the knitting needle and pull it off the needle. You now have 2 stitches on the hook. Slip 1 stitch over. Use the hook to pull the first stitch, the one closest to the hook handle, over the second stitch and off the hook. This secures the first stitch. Repeat the process. Continue transferring the next stitch from the knitting needle onto the hook and slipping the previous stitch over it until you've worked all the way around the tube. Final loop. When you have 1 stitch remaining, pull the loop snug to secure it. After both sides bind it off, remove the waste yarn. Mattress stitch. Prepare the edges. Flatten the tube so that the edges you want to seam are aligned. Make sure the right sides of the fabric are facing you. Thread the needle. Thread your tapestry needle with a piece of yarn long enough to sew the seam. Locate the stitch columns. On each side of the seam, find the edge stitch column. You will work between the first and second stitches from the edge on each side. Start the stitch. Insert the needle under the horizontal bar between the first and second stitches on one side. Pull the yarn through, leaving a small tail at the end for weaving in later. Alternate sides. Move to the opposite side and insert the needle under the corresponding horizontal bar between the first and second stitches. Pull through gently. Return to the first side and pick up the next horizontal bar. Continue seaming. Work back and forth, always inserting the needle under the next horizontal bar on the opposite side. Tighten the seam. Every few stitches, gently pull the yarn to tighten the seam. This will draw the edges together invisibly, like a natural continuation of the fabric. That's why it's called invisible stitching. Finish the seam. Once you've reached the end of the seam, secure the yarn by weaving it into the fabric on the wrong side. Trim any excess yarn. Now the cast iron pot handle cover is completed. The best cast iron pot handle cover ever used, better than the silicone handle cover I bought. If you like my video, please subscribe and like and share. Thank you.